The Death Tournament. It's been an immensely popular trope that has really taken off ever since the Hunger Games series. The trope spans famous books, movies, TV shows, and video games. And to first properly define the Death Tournament, also called Battle Royales, it's a fictional competition format where there can typically only be one winner, and all the subsequent losers, everyone else, literally lose everything. They die. Using this structure in media allows for the highest stakes possible. An individual has to win despite all the odds stacked against them, or else they die. These scenarios make for very entertaining stories because of the high stakes, the rewards, and all the improbability, and that is definitely why we have seen the trope become so popular today.
Happy Hunger Games! And may the odds be ever in your favor.
There is, however, a lot of variance in how death tournaments are represented to think about. Different death tournaments sometimes send completely different messaging. The Japanese movie Battle Royale and the Hunger Games send almost opposite messages compared to modern battle royales today, such as video games like Fortnite. So in this video essay, we will analyze what these exact messages are and how they vary across different death tournament representations. I think that most viewers agree that, even though it's fictional, the concept of a real death tournament is flat out terrible. It's a cruel, violent, and unjust competition with absurd stakes on the line, and the worst part is that it's usually all conducted just for entertainment. A lot of the time, we see death tournaments themselves try to acknowledge this dissonance between the entertainment of the genre and the immorality. They purposely employed a battle royale as satire, criticizing the tournament structure itself through, for instance, highlighting class differences between tournament viewers and participants, or by showing the overall viewing of battle royales as a spectacle of pacifying entertainment. In the Hunger Games example, the capital government forces the poorer 12 districts into sending their children to participate in the games. The death tournament is very specifically used by the capital to control the districts where most of the people are living in poverty. As Snow says himself,
"Hope. It is the only thing stronger than fear. A little hope is effective. A lot of hope is dangerous."
The Hunger Games instill fear into the people, while still given a sliver of hope that their certain district could actually come out victorious in the games and be rewarded. This system turns the districts against one another, competing to kill each other, rather than possibly, say, unite together against a greedy capital, which would be the actual action that's most in line with the people's best interests. In this way, the death tournament could, while admittedly overgeneralizing, be a microcosm representing greater class inequality, where people are so often arbitrarily gutted up against one another in this battle royale-like competition, despite all they have in common, as a distraction away from those in power, like the game makers in Panem, who are the real enemies because they are the ones responsible for setting up and influencing the overarching systems that result in the population's shared suffering.
Remember who the real enemy is.
Additionally, the Hunger Games story also brings attention to this aspect of spectacle as entertainment for pacification, which is really just another form of distraction. This comes from the saying that Panem is named after Panem et Circenses, or bread and circuses, essentially saying that if basic necessities and entertainment are provided to the people, the public will be content, unlikely to cause unrest or protest against injustice or advocate for any real change. The capital citizens in Panem are an extreme depiction of this phenomenon, shown in how they treat the games like some great holiday. A lot of focus is put on how they obsess over contestants' outfits and alliances, they root and bet on certain players to win or die, and they celebrate the victors like celebrities. These capital citizens are certainly portrayed as unconscious, or at least desensitized to the fact that they are watching real children die in front of them in these games. This brutality that their nation is running upon is being presented right in front of them in clear sight, but they are completely oblivious because of how that presentation is disguised just as convenient entertainment to consume without critically thinking, which, once again, you could argue draws many parallels to our own world of constant digital consumption and endless dopamine hits. It is from these multiple aspects that Suzanne Collins overall doesn't just present the death tournament as a fun, entertaining trope, She actively critiques it throughout the story, making the death tournament itself the specific point of conflict. By problematizing the games, she reveals the brutal, unfair, winner-takes-all competition as a system of oppression. The death tournament is employed in the Hunger Games purely as a plot point to justify the greater revolution against the capital. We particularly see this from how in every installment of the Hunger Games that is shown to the fans, special attention is dedicated to the players' subverting actions. Actions that undermine and resist against the overarching death tournament system of constant competition with, for instance, alliance, mutual aid, resistance, and self-sacrifice.
Good thing we're allies, right?
In Catching Fire, which was the last ever game before Panem's revolution, these subverting actions come to a peak in how the tributes from all different districts secretly unite to destroy the arena, completely stopping the games in rebellion against the capital. Acts of resistance like this really make the entire Hunger Games series a critique of the death tournament structure more than anything. And multiple other death tournament stories do undoubtedly follow the same pattern to the Hunger Games, where they highlight players' resistance against a battle royale system and therefore problematize the death tournament itself. One recent popular example is of course Squid Game, where the main character makes it his mission to take down the VIPs who organize the battle royales. At the same time, though, many modern death tournament representations are also completely oblivious to the messaging they reinforce. Many do just blindly celebrate the death tournament instead, which is what we will look at next. First, to define some terminology, I will call blind celebrations of death tournaments unconscious battle royales. Conscious battle royales would then be, for example, the Hunger Games, Squid Game, etc., those that specifically problematize and criticize the greater death tournament structure. The unconscious battle royales, on the other hand, will often just unknowingly celebrate the death tournament system instead. Considering an outright, unquestioning, and unnuanced celebration of the battle royale, video games come to mind. The battle royale genre in video games has exploded in popularity. Just a couple years ago, it seemed like every major game was jumping to release some version of an unconscious battle royale. And this section of the video isn't at all to say video games are bad or to criticize video game battle royales, but to just point out that in the video game reimagining of the death tournament, the satirical aspect was definitely lost. In conscious battle royales, the death tournament exists amongst very specific contexts in order to satirize the tournament. In video games, however, we often are just presented with a death tournament in isolation, no second thoughts given, which is what makes them unconscious. Take Fortnite, for example. 100 players in an arena tasked to kill each other until one player remains. There is very little space for cooperation/resistance against a battle royale mode. The game mechanics don't allow for it. And remember, these such actions of resistance were the focus in conscious death tournaments like the Hunger Games and Squid Game, which critiqued the battle royale structure. By not implementing these game mechanics that allow for these subverting actions of cooperation, battle royale video games instead just simply celebrate the death tournament system and its underlying values of constant competition and winner takes all. The game makers, who were the villains in the conscious death tournaments, become the video game studios themselves who have created and enforced this strict battle royale structure where the players have no choice but to kill each other until one remains. And of course, these are just video games. It's not like these are real life death tournaments being played out, but these games are taking these radical death tournament stories and stripping them of their political context and messages. This repackaging of the battle royale genre shifts the underlying messaging of the original death tournament stories that were focused on resistance, cooperation, and mutual aid. It shifts away from that messaging that critique death tournament values to instead just reinforce them, upholding those status quo dominant ideologies of endless competition, hyper-individualism, which we already see so prevalent in society, and also in the isolated, unconscious battle royale structure. In the particular case of the Hunger Games, we see a death tournament critique with radical messaging reimagined into these video game battle royales that instead blindly celebrate the dominant societal capitalist values. This process is not uncommon. Large-scale commodification usually happens in such a way that somehow subverts or waters down any potentially anti-capitalist messaging. As Mark Fisher says about radical media, capitalism can metabolize and absorb anything, even that which is ostensibly aimed at displacing it. Which makes sense considering that it's these massive media corporations that control the messaging and would benefit from more status quo aligned messages being sent to the public. The power, however, isn't only with these big media corporations that control the media we watch. The other aspect of it is fan receptions. Often, even while viewing radical media like the conscious death tournaments, many viewer interpretations just fall in line with dominant ideologies anyway. For example, there's the many Hunger Games fans who choose to focus on the love triangle or the 75 different Hunger Game installations, rather than the actual story of a revolution. That would be a more unconscious interpretation even of conscious media. On the other hand also, a Fortnite player could have fun playing Battle Royale video games while still being aware that they are participating in an unfair, constant competition, winner-takes-all system for a recreation. That would be consciously engaging with what's otherwise unconscious media. Fans don't necessarily internalize every message they consume. The individual has the ability to make their own readings, whether that be in line with the media that they're consuming, or directly/partially disagreeing. And so, while we as the public don't have much control in how such media is made and remade into either conscious or unconscious mediums, we do have power over how we receive media messages. Although this of course relies on people being educated, critical, and media literate, only the viewers do hold this final power of interpretation. The individual ultimately always has this unique ability to choose how they engage with the messaging they receive. How we interpret, internalize, and react to these unconscious or conscious death tournaments is ultimately always up to us no matter what.